It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Well, I think that this first one that we're going to bring up, I have rung this bell a bunch because I really believe it. And this is one of those things where we treat it as like a holiday. And the fact that I was actually trying to work on this on January the 2nd or 3rd. I mean, I was already working on my net worth statement as soon as possible. But I do think it's interesting. We're now a few weeks into January. Statements have now been released by a lot of your investment companies. This is the time, because I don't want people, some of that momentum gets lost after we've gone a few weeks into the new year. Don't skip out on this step, even though, because I know 2022 was a hard year financially, meaning it's not one of those years that you want to put a trophy up upon and say, man, that was a great year for my personal finances. I still think it's a very important exercise. Don't skip this just because we got bad news last year.
And I think what's great is you don't need to skip this step no matter where you are in your financial journey. Even if you're someone who's well along in your path, but you've never done a net worth statement, you should do one. Or what I tend to hear more frequently is someone says, oh, I just graduated, I don't have any money, or all I've got is student loan debt, or all I have is fill in the blank on the excuse, and people don't actually do it. Well, I want to tell you that your future self will thank you if you do a net worth statement now. And a lot of folks think, oh, okay, well, you guys are just talking about this because you have the net worth tool that we'll talk about and because of that kind of stuff. No, me and Brian have been doing this for a long, long time, and I thought it'd be interesting. We've been tracking this since we started out doing this, since we started early on in our careers. And I'm going to go and just show you, this is what my net worth statement was back in 2009. The very first net worth statement that I did. There's not a lot to it. There's not a lot of money on it. You can actually go in and see. It's pretty simple. You list out the things that you own, and then you list out the things that you owe. So that way you have some sort of starting point. I am so happy that I did this so many years ago, because now every year as I track it, I can actually track my progress and I can actually see how it changes through time.
Well, this does. If you can't be a good CEO or CFO of your personal household unless you are actually tracking your progress, because this really is your executive summary to see how things have gone. I thought, because I also reflected on, last year was not a good year. But I was like, this isn't the first time this has happened. I know when I went and pulled my 2007, 2008, that year, my net worth actually went down. 2008 caused my net worth to go down 13%. And here's something that I think everybody needs to listen up and pay attention to, is the fact that a lot of you are hyper savers. You're saving greater than 25% and investing that. But it's more than likely, even with your strong savings and investment goals, your net worth still went down. But that is actually something you can look into. Is I want you to compare and contrast, what are your liquid assets worth now versus where they were a year ago. Compare that to what you saved so you can figure out, hey, how is my cash doing? How are my investments doing? How is my debt repayment going? This is the tool that's going to make it all possible.
And now, if you can see, back when we were doing this many years ago, it wasn't super flashy, it wasn't super exciting, but it was still super valuable. So maybe you're someone out there who has no idea where to start. You've never done this before. We want you to go to moneyguy.com/resources. We're actually making available a free template for you. So if you've never done this before, go download this free template and start tracking your net worth so you can figure out, okay, where do I put my checking and savings account, and where does my Roth IRA go, and where does my 401k go? Rather than you trying to figure that out all for yourself, we've actually created a super easy template for you to use so that you have no excuses. There's no reason for you to go out and put together your net worth statement starting right now.
Well, what I love about this gives you kind of a guided entry into this whole healthy behavior, because I had somebody just on Twitter this morning saying, hey, how do I record my house? And they actually laid out all the numbers. They were like, hey, my house is worth this. And so you could list either the market value, you could list cost plus improvements as what it's worth. And they said, but I owe this. And, how does this work with net worth? And I was like, well, it's easy enough. You put down what it's worth, or the cost plus improvements on the assets. You put what you owe on the liabilities, and then the equity, or what you actually own, flows down to your net worth. This template will actually help you navigate that without having to even have the question of, how do I even do this?
Now, if you're someone who has been tracking your net worth for a while, or you think, okay, that's great, but I want to know a little bit more. I want to dive a little bit deeper. We actually have a net worth tool along with curated videos you can watch where we walk you through how we think about putting together our net worth statement. What are some of the things we think about, like how to value real estate? If you want to know more about that, you want to go check out that tool, you can go to learn.moneyguide.com. It is there available for you. So hopefully this becomes an annual tradition that not just this year, but every single year for the rest of your financial life, you're tracking, because you can't know where you're going unless you know and understand today where you're starting from.
Well, two things I noticed this year from looking at because I use the net worth tool, and I know you use the net worth tool.
Yep.
My 3 bucket strategy has completely changed, because realize what happens in your 3 buckets is your most aggressive is typically your Roth.
Yep.
Got hammered last year,
did.
so it was amazing to see how the 3 buckets changed between my taxable, my tax-free Roth, as well as my tax-deferred. Also looking at how much, because it shows you how efficient you are with your income versus your asset growth. Obviously, in a bad year like 2022, that was not even a positive thing. But that's why it's so important to at least have that ability to say, hey, what worked, what didn't? Are there areas I can improve? The tool definitely helps you out in those areas.